This is not the only way Trump is raising money. I'm not making this up. Sounds like I am. He's got his own Bible now. You saw that he's selling his own Bible. But it's not just a regular Bible, please, that you'd buy in the airport. No. It's a Bible, also has in it the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So his fans are going to love it. It has everything they pretend to have read in one book.
I have much more to play for you from where that came from in just a second. But you all have been enjoying my responses to Friday night editions of Real Time with Bill Maher. So here we are doing it again. And I always like to add the caveat for some reason that a lot of areas of criticism for Bill Maher, and we disagree on numerous subjects, but his mocking of Trump usually gets it right. And that's what you saw there. Before getting to other things, the grifty Bible, it should have been something we expected. Of course, eventually Trump was going to start selling Bibles. He's going to sell everything. But it still came as a shock to some people. And also including the Constitution in the Bible, and then Trump touting how he loves the Bible and he loves the Constitution. I think the Declaration of Independence in it as well. And as Bill Maher said, that's putting all of the documents that Trump does not dedicate himself to or really understand in one place. And I guess that's good. Maybe he could spend a little time educating himself. But I will say, what's the most important to point out for this presidential election is anytime Trump brings up the Constitution, this is my new rule of thumb. Anytime he brings up how he protects the Constitution, or he's fighting for the Constitution, or the radical left wants to destroy the Constitution, just remind whoever it is that on Trump's True Social account right now, he has a post up, he still stands by it apparently, where he called for the termination of the Constitution in service of his election lies. So you can't say you're fighting for or protecting the Constitution while still having a post up on your social media account where you called for the termination of the Constitution. And that's just his words. Then we look at his actions where he tried to block the peaceful transfer of power, a core part of our constitutional process, and how people still think he's a fighter for the Constitution, I do not understand. But before saying more, and I have a lot more to say, here is more from Bill Maher.
And finally, new rule. Now that both Biden and Trump are asking voters the age-old question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Someone must tell them that everyone's answer is, you're kidding, right? 4 years ago?
Really quickly, going to pause your viewing of this segment to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's so helpful to grow the show. Just make sure that subscribe button is clicked and click the like button as well. Back to the video.
Yeah, I remember March 2020. I was bartering for toilet paper and eating all the food out of my earthquake kit. Yes, what a great time that was when COVID hit and America wet itself, emptied its pockets, and curled up in a ball.
Yeah, so this is the big talking point from Republicans lately. Trump sent it out on True Social saying, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? The idea being that people will answer no, and they'll say, that's why I want to vote for Trump. Now, you're just not going to be able to do that, okay? There's no way, if the world's at all rational, which it's not, but we'll see. There's no way you're going to cause us all to experience this collective amnesia and pretend like years just didn't happen that did. And so 4 years ago, we were in the middle of this crisis, and we had a president who was exhibiting a dereliction of duty, who was failing on all fronts, who was humiliating us on the world stage, and was not leading when we needed it the most. So we're not going to forget that. And trying to pretend like 4 years ago is 2019 is not going to work for MAGA, hopefully. And I've said this before, but the reason why they like to rewrite history a little bit and sort of pretend like Biden did take over right after 2019 and things were maybe more stable than they were is for two reasons. The first being it helps to soften the horrible nature of Trump's record. And it helps to make us forget that Trump did fail us so much when we needed a president who took things seriously and was able to lead the most. And so it's a part of rewriting his record. But just as importantly, it's a part of rewriting Joe Biden's record for them. And whenever you do take into consideration the proper context of this crisis, a social, economic, and public health crisis, unemployment high, wages down, crime spiking, of course, this public health emergency still being dealt with in a major way. And you're thinking, oh, that's when Biden became president? Oh, yeah. And then you look at what's happened since then, the stunning economic recovery that's outpaced comparable economies, unemployment lower for longer than we've seen in 50 years, inflation back down to a healthy figure, wages growing compared to inflation, stock market breaking records, record job growth under Joe Biden, crime plummeting. We've got the pandemic under control, and all of that happened, that just recovery, which is all we really expected from Biden. Can you just get us out of this disaster that your predecessor left? And then alongside that, all these legislative victories that have been historic. And I do always like to add the important caveat: Trump's not to blame for the pandemic, to be clear. When I say that, it's that he wildly mismanaged it. And that was what Biden had to inherit. Meanwhile, by the way, not having a predecessor who was allowing for the transition of power to be peaceful and coordinated so that that response could be done in parallel. No, it was a complete disaster. Biden was picking up the pieces. And that context is also something that Republicans really want you to forget. Because if you remember it, then you'll be much more impressed by the record of Joe Biden. Okay, so on Bill Maher, he brought on CNN host Fareed Zakaria, who does a lot of great work. I happen to disagree with him here. Take a look.
Ronna McDaniel. Now, if you don't know who that is, she was the head of the Republican National Committee. Ronna McDaniel, not the clown from McDonald's. That's, although she probably wishes she took that job. Because, okay, this saga gets to such a fundamental question. That's why I loved when you wrote about it. I want to bring it up now. Okay, so NBC News hires her because people are always saying to the news organizations, you're liberal. Let's hear the other voices. And it's not an invalid thing to say. So they hire this Ronna McDaniel, but she was an election denier when she worked for Trump, has since changed her tune. Okay, this is the problem, is like, how do you represent this large part of the country that does not believe the election was legitimate? How do you say to people, you know, okay, we want to include you, but we can't deny that what you think is stupid because Trump lost. What you think is stupid, but we still want to include you. Guys.
You get to go first. All right. So I think, as you say, you've got to remember about a third of the country still believes that the 2020 election was incorrectly decided. That's about 85 million adult Americans. And to be fair to her, she has now said that she thinks Biden is the legitimate president. So really the question is, how much do you punish her for her past lies? And I think the point here is liberals are meant to believe in free speech. I mean, that is one of the foundational values of liberalism. And if you're going to say you're going to deplatform 85 million Americans, that's a lot of people. They say, no, it's not about that, it's that she lied. Well, you know, Bill Clinton lied under oath. I think last time I checked, he's been on MSNBC. They say, well, she's an election denier. Well, Stacey Abrams was an election denier about her own election, and they've had her on. The larger point is, you know, the book I've written is really about these 4 centuries of progress and backlash. And what you find is liberals often trigger backlash when they use illiberal means to get to their ends. You know, they're like, we're going to do what it takes.
Yeah, so it doesn't have anything to do with her being a liar, as he brought up. And I just need to make it very clear, it's not illiberal means. It's not a violation of someone's freedom of speech to not pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's what the deal was that was canceled. So if you think you have a free speech right to being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, by NBC News, then I'm sure a lot of people are going to go demand their free speech right from NBC News. Okay. But no, of course not. They can choose who they pay that amount of money. And why shouldn't they pay Ronna McDaniel that to be a contributor? Well, it's because if we're going to have a functioning democratic process, a political environment in which we can have these debates that she would be engaging in on NBC News, then we have to reject people who try to do what she tried to do. And so what I mean is, she participated in, alongside Trump and his allies, an allegedly illegal scheme. Now, she hasn't been indicted for this, but other members of the scheme have. An allegedly illegal scheme to disenfranchise millions of voters, block the peaceful transfer of power, and keep Trump in the White House despite losing an election. And so if the president stayed president despite losing, then that would have been the end of our democratic process. She would have participated in a scheme to end that process. And so then all of the debates we have up here, all the free speech and everything we do on top of the foundation of our democracy is irrelevant because our democracy crumbles. And so, yes, you do have to have a principle in a rational political environment that people who don't want to uphold the foundation of that rational political environment, what we're all operating on top of, because what are our political debates relevant for if we can't then go have our voice heard in our democratic process, which is what Ronna McDaniel was trying to prevent and disenfranchise millions of voters to keep Trump in the White House, right? So that's what we're rejecting here. Other people, you're conservative, you're right wing, bring them on. Let's debate. But especially when she was getting offered hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to be a commentator, no, we're not going to normalize people who tried to end our democratic process by paying them and showing, see, they're just another commentator. There has to be a line. And that's something I would think Fareed Zakaria would understand. Again, it's not conservatism that should be ousted off the airwaves. It's not disagreeing views. That's all good. It's that if we start saying, yeah, give big contributor deals to people who tried to end our democratic process, we're then sending the message, this is an acceptable part of our political discourse. It's not, though. That is the main unacceptable part, is people who don't think the political discourse should be happening because it all happens with the assumption that we're going to have a democratic process to go act in based on the political discourse we have over here. Hopefully that makes sense. A lot of confusion about that issue. One more clip here from Mark Esper, Trump's former defense secretary.
The first year of a second Trump term will look like the last year of the first Trump term. In other words, with all the craziness, with the fresh troops in. Remember, he brought in all the fresh people in March of 2020, and those are the folks that carried that last year that eventually led us through the election and into the, the 2.5 months of election denialism. And so, yeah, look, I think it's going to be very rough. And the number one attribute that he will seek from anybody coming into the administration will be loyalty, and not to the Constitution, but to him.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. And part of his thing is not just the Senate confirmed people and other political appointees, but as you know, one of the factors, one of the pillars of this kind of retribution pitch when he comes in will be the so-called Schedule F, where he'll try to get rid of all the government employees, the civil service employees, and put in more of his loyalists. So, look, I think there's a lot to be concerned about. I've said I believe he's a threat to democracy, and we should be very mindful of that.
So you'll vote for Biden?
Well, with every...
So I just don't get it. If you say what he does, and I thank him for saying courageous, lots of threats, I'm sure, from Trump supporters for him doing this, but if you say Trump threatens democracy, then your only option is Joe Biden. Trump or Biden's going to win. I put every last dime for the rest of my life on that. And so then, and I know Mark Esper gets that, and so then you got to go out there and advocate for Biden, right? If you care about your democracy. And it's very strange and sort of enraging to see anyone who can acknowledge the first part, which is Trump threatens democracy, and not acknowledge the second part, so Biden needs to get elected. And I will say, I won't play this clip, I don't have it for you, but I saw a different part during this. Mark Esper was talking about, pronouns and wokeness, that's going to hurt Biden's campaign. I just feel like people are missing the mark. You know, just sort of putting their attention on things that aren't justified to have your attention, and thinking that's the issue here, that debate that I didn't even know was really still going on so much. I've been too focused on if democracy is gonna remain. I think you're missing something for sure, an important aspect of this moment. And don't make Biden's campaign something that's not. His campaign's about protecting and defending democracy, making sure that continues. And also his record overseeing a stunning economic recovery, crime plummeting, and wanting to protect reproductive freedoms, and then his historic policy record, historic investment in green energy and infrastructure, lowering prescription drug costs, expansions of healthcare for veterans, etc. That's what Biden's talking about. So at least engage with what he's actually running on, and not sort of spiral off a conversation about a alternate universe campaign that's just not going on. And I think that's important for us to say, because we see these sorts of things like, oh, let's get all obsessed and debating all over again about these culture war things. No, stop that. Let's stay focused. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel.